Assistant moderators, I have Adiba from Student Leadership Johns Creek, and I also have Ani from Student Leadership Johns Creek. I was not able to attend the debate that Student Leadership Johns Creek put on, but I heard it was an exceptionally good event. I watched a little bit of it on YouTube, and I thought they did a great job. And by the way, thank you, and a round of applause to the Johns Creek Community Association and Student Leadership Johns Creek for putting on the show. We have two timers who are going to help us, and I understand they are relentless. Like, they've been instructed to knock you down. I mean, I think they're going to get violent if you go over the 2 minutes. I'm not sure. Between the two of them, they weigh like 85 pounds between the two of them. So I don't think there's going to be any violence among the timers. But we have Kriti, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Let everybody see you stand up. And Venetia. Am I saying that correct? So the way it's going to work is each candidate is going to have 2 minutes for opening remarks, and then 1 minute at the end for closing remarks. The remaining time, if we have any, will be allocated to additional questions. We have 4 set questions. We could very well take some questions from the audience. We've gotten 3 or 4 of them already. We also have a couple of alternate questions as well that we could ask at the end. At this time, in the spirit of transparency, the Community Association would like for everyone to know that while they're sponsoring the event, there are 2 prior board members running for this election. None of the current board members participated in formulating the questions. While the questions were submitted via email to JCCA board members, they were passed on to the Secretary of State ambassadors, that's the student leadership folks, and to Mr. Gaddis, that's very classy, you referred to me as Mr. Gaddis, for review and are subject to the moderator's discretion. Oh, that's a lot of title right there, subject to the moderator's discretion. Each candidate will be asked the same questions, so each candidate will be asked the 4 questions. They will, if we go down the list, each one of them will get a different question. I'm not sure that I'm smart enough to follow the order of the questions, but I'll do the best I possibly can. The candidates cannot have any pre-written notes. They cannot have any cell phones out. And then the moderators, we have the right to ask additional follow-up questions if we think it might be something that the attendees would be interested in. We're going to start with opening remarks. We're going to start at the left-hand end of the table issue with you. The microphone is sitting right there, and it is off. If you will turn it on, we'll do opening remarks. Introduce yourself, if you will, and give your 2-minute opening statement. We'll go from left all the way to the right hand. And by the way, big round of applause for all of the candidates for putting their neck on the line.
Thanks, Cleve. And first of all, I want to thank everyone for coming, taking 2-3 hours out of your day to come and meet the rest of us. My name is Isher, and I am the candidate for Johns Creek City Council Post 1. I have been a longtime resident here. I've lived here since 1989. My parents live here. I've raised my kids here. I'm really totally invested in the city. I'm totally invested in the residents. And I look forward to listening to more. As I walk around, I've heard a lot of people talk about the issues that they have, and they love the city. They want to improve their quality of life, and that's what they're looking for, and that's what I really want to bring, is solutions and to help quality of life here at Johns Creek.
Thank you. Lenny?
First, I'd like to say thank the JCCA, Cleve, student leadership, Irene. You guys are great. Those kids are awesome. St. Benedict's and everyone else. I'm Lenny Zaprowski. I am humbly asking for your vote to continue to be your City Council representative at Post 1. If elected, I would pledge to help together solve some traffic congestion issues. I pledge to help develop our park systems together. No tournament fields involved in that. I pledge to help update the comprehensive land use plan, which is a very important part, and I think we can do this preserving our residential, bettering community, which I clearly hear we want to do, and I think we can do this while maintaining a density of less than 2 per acre, hopefully, if things go well. I pledge fiscal responsibility. I pledge transparency. I pledge independence. I hope you get to talk about my record. I think my record shows I may be the most independent member of this council, current council. I pledge to do everything I can to keep our public safety top rated, to keep us safe. I pledge to do everything I can to help our school systems remain the top school systems in the state. That makes people want to move here. I hope to, and I pledge to help keep our home values high while keeping our taxes low. I love this city. I also grew up in this city. I have a mom that lives here. I raised a daughter who will be 21 here. I also have put my sweat out here. I have done many things over the years, from coaching sports to being involved in student governance committees, the BZA, city council. This means a lot, and if you'll allow me, I'd like to take this journey with you for 4 more years, and 4 more years only. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I also want to thank everybody. My name is John Bradbury. I'm a 20-year resident of Johns Creek. I'm a business owner, a former Marine. I'm a former president of 2 different HOAs here in Johns Creek. And I'm also a former board member of this organization, the JCCA. Thank you, JCCA, for hosting this. And also I'm the founder of Preserve Johns Creek. I founded Preserve Johns Creek because I believe that Johns Creek is at a critical juncture. I believe that when we voted to incorporate Johns Creek, we weren't really trying to build a big city. We were trying to protect this community. I wanted to preserve Johns Creek as a lower density, premier bedroom community that protects the quality of life of our residents. As a voter, I think it's very important that you look to candidates whose focus is not commercial development or pursuing tax revenue over quality of life. I'm the only candidate in this race that has a track record of advocating on behalf of residents of Johns Creek. So it's not just about identifying the problems. For me, it's been about studying the issues and in many cases actually proposing alternative solutions, like in the case of widening 141. So I just want to say I love Johns Creek, but we have some real work to do. We have some important choices to make. For me, I want to see us get back to basics. I want to see us focus on traffic and preserving Johns Creek as a great place to live and to raise a family. I look forward to the forum, the debate, and I look forward to trying to earn your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Vicki Horton. I'm originally from Ohio. I've been a resident of Atlanta for 20 years and Johns Creek for 8 years. I think it's important to give you a little bit about my background, because the way I'm going to talk to you tonight is going to come from a lot of experience that I have in working with communities across the country with the same kind of issues that we have. So I actually have my bachelor's degree is in secondary education, which is where I honed my ability to facilitate people who aren't really on the same page and get them on the same page. And then I have a master's degree in government with a focus on economics and planning. I worked for 25 years helping both companies decide where to locate their facilities, getting into zoning, permitting, land use, transportation, all of those things. But then also I work with communities, county and city organizations or groups across the country to help them deal with those same issues. So how do they want to use their land? How do they go about setting up their comprehensive plans? The zoning and the permitting that then supports those plans and protects those plans, as well as transportation, labor and workforce issues, all of those types of things. So for me, I know I'm the only candidate not currently on the council that has direct work experience for 25 years in doing what we're going to need our council to do in the future. And so I'm very fortunate, I feel, to be here. I want to help us, and I know that I can help us. And so I'd like you to check out my website to get more information about me and some of my thoughts. I also have my commitment to the community on there, which will not only talk about why I would be a good council person, but how I'm going to conduct myself and what you can expect from me. And so if you like all of that, I would be honored with your vote.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mark Menko, candidate for Post 3. I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to have qualified and present to you the last month and this month my experience as far as what qualifies me for being your Post 3 representative. A lot of issues come up within the city as far as problems go. We talk about transportation, we talk about the parks, we talked about billboards. But having solutions, having an analytical background, by degree I'm an engineer. I got into product management where you're responsible for P&L, profit and loss, or EBIT as it's now called. I've managed teams and I've managed budgets up to $190 million, okay? I'm not trying to throw out a big number, but what it comes down to is those budgets and operating at those levels, you're held accountable in corporate America. This year is going to be 30 years that I've been working within corporate America. And you're accountable to, I've been held accountable to CEOs, executive management. And that accountability, as time goes on, teaches you what the expectations are. It's no different when it comes to the voters of the city of Johns Creek. You have to hold us accountable for those expectations on how you want to see the city to grow. We're not running, for me, I'm not running as a politician, I'm running as a public servant. So I will create ideas, which I've already had as a member on the CAC, Citizens Advisory Committee, for the 20-year comp plan. I was on the Noise Ordinance Committee as well. I am a JCCA former board member, most recently. But you have to come up with ideas. And one idea that I was very proud of is residential nodes, which recently got adopted into the comp plan draft as community planning areas. Being able to influence and come up with that idea and getting support from the CAC committee has been a very rewarding situation for me.
Thank you.
So I hope for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike?
Mayor Mike Bodker, and I want to say thank you to all those who put this event together, and thank you to those who've attended. Having been through a few of these over the years, a lot of work goes into it, and I want to thank especially the student leadership team. You all have done a great job, not once, now twice, and I suspect many more times in the future. And you really are our future. It's something to be proud of. And thank you to all of you for coming out and getting educated. Hopefully this will help you make a more informed decision, and I hope you will spread the word and get others to vote. Regardless of the outcome, we need all of our citizens, as many as possible, to vote so that we can really hear from citizens of Johns Creek. I've been serving our community continuously since April of 1999 when I was the president of my HOA. I then had a little problem in the neighborhood and ended up joining the JCCA when I became a board member of that, and was co-zoning chair for a number of years, where I sort of got my teeth cut on what it means to zone property. I'm proud to say I never lost a case on behalf of our community in front of the Board of Commissioners, which was no easy task, since, as you may know, back then they weren't very friendly to those of us from North Fulton. From there, of course, you know the rest is history. I led the effort to help us become the city of Johns Creek, and I've been serving as your mayor ever since. I'm asking you for one more term. This would be my final term. It'll either end on December 31st of this year, or if you're kind enough to give me one last shot, then it'll end in 4 years from now. And then I'm going to probably quietly fade into the woodwork. I've got 4 things I'm going to focus on in this final term, and that is to carefully partner with you to implement the T-SPLOS projects. T-SPLOS was the funding source. The projects have been on the books for most of them for about 20 years. To try to find a way to do those and preserve our residential character. Second, to implement our parks with equal care, to make sure that we balance the needs of those who live closest to them with the needs of those who live away. Focus on our comp plan to make sure it represents your perspective. And I'll never get to the 4th one. Have a great night. I hope you're going to vote.
Thank you.
My name is Alex Marchetti, and I want to thank everybody for attending this evening. Probably a large number of you don't know me, and what I'd like to tell you about me is that I am not a politician. I am not launching a political career. I have no intention of doing that. And I'm not part of the political establishment. I'm a businessman. I'm a resident of Johns Creek for over 25 years. The reason that I am interested in I've decided to run for mayor of Johns Creek, there are a number of those. And let's start with the fact that I believe at the last forum that we had and all the candidates were there, the question was directly asked to everyone, do you believe and would you vote for term limits? And it was a unanimous yes. I'm running for election for mayor because I believe in term limits. Beyond that, what I want to talk about is urbanization. And everybody needs to understand what the Webster definition of urbanization is. Urbanization is the industrialization and modernization of large numbers of people moving to a city. That's a good thing in a way if it's managed properly. But I look at what we've done in the last 11 years, and what we've done is we've addressed some issues, maybe it's not to our satisfaction. First one, let's talk about traffic congestion, okay? Traffic congestion within Johns Creek. It's gone from a nuisance to a place where it's now choking our city. It's putting our residents' risk and health and welfare at risk. The other things I want to talk about are we need to unite this community. Through all of our discussions about what we should be as a community, I've noticed this become very divisive. And I think it takes a time now. We need to unite all the residents, form a community, and take all the ideas of the diverse, varying groups of people and cultures and form them into one community that moves us forward towards where we want to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Andres, and I'm running for re-election for Johns Creek City Council. I do want to thank the JCCA for volunteering their time to come out and to plan this, as well as student leadership Johns Creek. You did a great job last time, and I'm excited about this time. And I thank you all for coming out because it is a school night, and you all came out to hear the candidates and to be informed about your decision. 2 years ago in this very room, I stood here and asked for your vote to run for City Council, and you didn't know me, and I was humbled that you trusted me, and I was elected. And I ran on a platform of fiscal accountability, preserving our residential community, and also my passion is ensuring that our government was one of the people, for the people, and by the people. And since I believe I work for you, and this is a job interview, I'm here to tell you that we accomplished those goals. We rolled back the millage rate like we talked about. We also cut expenses out of the budget. I was accused of being for open zoning, and so I made that commitment to you that in zoning cases, I would support the comprehensive land use plan, and I did that. And then from the government perspective, I started having town halls on my own, and now the council has town halls. We have meetings with residents about traffic congestion problems or issues going on in different areas. Individual residents are able to have an open ear with city staff as well as full community meetings. And coming to all these forums, it is clear to me that the community has really engaged in that and is coming out. And I'm very excited about that. So now I stand before you asking for one 4-year term to solidify some of these things that we've started putting in place. I want to put strong management and financial tools in place at the council level. The comprehensive land use plan is coming up, which needs to incorporate transportation funded through T-SPOS as well as the water sewer system, stormwater system, as well as continue our efforts because we are the government. We are the people, of the people, and for the people, and we need to keep that communication going and building because that's how our community is going to be so successful. We're going to do that together. So let me know if you have questions afterwards. I look forward to the forum. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chris Jackson, and I am running for Post 5. Moved here 7 years ago with my wife and our blended family of 5 kids, and for a number of reasons, but mainly for the schools. Shortly after that, I got involved with our schools and became part of the Archman Middle School Governance Council for 3 years. I actually chaired that for 2 years. And I'm the current co-chair of the School Governance Council at Johns Creek High School, as well as on the leadership committee for the school superintendent, as well as the parent council. Before that, we lived in Woodstock, and I actually was the chair of the Park and Rec Advisory Council, and also was the chair of our sports commission in our neighborhood, which was 1,100 homes. Before that, in Charlotte, I was actually the chairman of the Park and Rec Commission, which was 134 parks, as well as the chairman of the Charlotte City Partners, and the chairman of the Mecklenburg County Commissioners Budget Advisory Council. The reason I mention this stuff everything I've gotten myself involved in, whatever community I've lived in, I've been asked to lead. And right now, we need leaders. We are at a critical stage of this city for the maturation. Next 4 years are going to be detrimental to us. And we have to have people who can work together, who can lead, who can get us to that goal. And I've proven that time and time again over the years. I hope to have you vote on November 7th. Thank you.
I'd like to compliment all of the candidates for their sense of timing, and I'd like to point out that it is not easy to have a 20-minute answer, to have to give it in 2 minutes, and to have somebody flashing orange, yellow, and red lights in front of you. So thank you very much for doing a great job. For our first round of questions, I'm going to turn it over to my new friend, Adiba.
I'm a short person, I can't use the stand. All right. Candidate Yang, your question. During this election cycle, posts on social media outlets such as Nextdoor, Facebook, and other local blogs seem to have hit a new low in terms of attacking individual candidates. These type of posts can result in a misinformed public. What solutions would you propose in order to provide the public with accurate information and credible sources?
Repeat the question. That was a very long question, so I apologize.
That's cool. During this election cycle, posts on social media outlets such as Nextdoor, Facebook, and other local blogs seem to have hit a new low in terms of attacking individual candidates. These type of posts can result in a misinformed public. What solutions would you propose in order to provide the public with accurate information and credible sources?
These posts that, well, and you know what, a lot of people do go through social media, and social media is a big part of our lives. So one of the things that we can do is to go directly to the candidate. Another thing is to actually look at what they're proposing, look at what they're doing, and actually doing one-on-ones. I think when people don't know someone, they will just immediately attack. And sometimes you change your mind when you meet the person. Sometimes you change your mind when you meet someone else who sees them. So, I encourage people to, yes, social media is very important and it's very helpful, but at the same time, if it is attacking, we have to take that with a grain of salt and say, you know what, let's stop it. And a lot of people turn it off. The negativity actually turns off people. So in reality, I think it hurts. The negativity actually hurts people anyway. So I think if you go back and look at people and meet them individually, that will help them.
Thank you, candidate Yang. Councilmember Zaprowski, your question. Many voters will consider your past voting record, whether or not you voted in elections, as an indication of your level of civic involvement and belief in our system. Please describe your voting record.
I think my voting record is very good. Depends on how you view things. I had a friend in college that told me a no vote when you don't vote is a vote for ignorance, and you can't complain if you don't vote. And I've taken that to heart. So I think I have a pretty consistent voting record. I will say there's some votes in my past, in the 80s, that I think I may not be as proud of as I would be today. I hope we can keep those covered up. But I think I consistently vote, especially in local elections. That's where you really make a difference. So I will, since I have some time, like to talk about my voting record as a council member. And I've heard a lot of things on some of these blogs we're talking about as being a puppet or whatever. And I can assure you, I have looked at my record over the last 2 years, and I am the most independent voter on this council. 65% of the time, all 7 of us agree together. So that's a pretty high number. So you have 35% that we disagree upon. And I've looked at that. I disagree with our mayor the most, at about 10%. I think I voted with him about 75% of the time, so about 1/3 of the time I agree with him when we don't agree together. I agree with Councilmember Andres about 88% of the time, so about 2/3 of the time. I think that makes me pretty independent. I hope you will continue to look at me and maybe give me another chance, because I think sometimes we need council members who will stand up for your rights. And I think I've proven maybe a little bit too passionately sometimes, but I think I'm willing to stand up for you guys, and I'm actually very proud of my voting record. Not in the 80s.
Candidate Bradbury. The state of Georgia requires the Steinberg Act to be used in making decisions on zoning cases. Tell us what you know about the Steinberg Act and the 6 criteria to be used.
So the Steinberg Act, that came about from Representative Kathy Steinberg down in Atlanta. And basically, it was said that, yes, zoning cases can be fought by the people. We can have opportunity to say no on zoning cases. But the Steinberg criteria gives that framework by which, or criteria by which we should find reason in fact, not just because we don't like it. And so, if there is an application for a zoning case, obviously they're fighting for it, but oftentimes it's the people that want to perhaps see it denied. The people have to come up with the criteria within the Steinberg Act, like, is it causing additional water runoff? Is it causing an undue burden on the schools, an undue burden on our traffic? And so, you know, the more that our citizens can be up to speed on the Steinberg criteria when there is a controversial zoning case, the better off we're going to be.
Thank you, Candidate Bradbury. Candidate Horton. The mayor and city council are responsible for making decisions on zoning cases here in Johns Creek, and zoning ordinances are quite detailed and can be confusing. How did you, or how do you, plan to educate yourself on zoning ordinances and procedures so you can make informed decisions?
Okay, well, fortunately for me, I've had the opportunity to work in the process of putting zoning together, both putting the zoning in place, interpreting that zoning by different types of projects. And you're right, not just zoning, but permitting, and really most law has, it needs to be interpreted. And most law is actually written to allow you to work around it if you need to, at the discretion. That's in fact the terminology that's typically used. So from a zoning perspective, I already have a background in that. So for me, one of my first tasks as council person will be to actually get in and understand the specific zoning that we've put into place, but then also any of those areas that might be of concern to the residents. If there's certain concerns about how we've zoned something. I mean, zoning is a tool for government to be able to protect and support this comprehensive plan. That's really what it was designed to do. So one of the things I would look at is our zoning actually supporting our comprehensive plan? And we're still in the process of finalizing that. But I've been to communities where they put a comprehensive plan in place and they forgot to update their zoning, and so it wasn't really supporting what they wanted to do. So for me, that's where I would start.
Thank you, Candidate Horton. Candidate Vanko. During this election cycle, posts on social media outlets, such as Nextdoor, Facebook, and other local blogs, seem to have hit a new low in terms of attacking individual candidates. These types of posts can result in a misinformed public. What solutions would you propose in order to provide the public with accurate information and credible sources?
Actually drive sometimes the behavior of their early supporters. There's definitely a commitment. So first it's got to start with the candidate on what type of campaign that they run. Typically the blogs that are out there, the people that on the early cycle of the election are really just reiterating what the behavior of the candidate is. And a vote is something that is very precious. I'm not getting sentimental about it, but what ends up has to happen is you have to look at all the candidates and get to know them. And that's not just talking about the problems at a top level. That's, again, I'm going to go back to the corporate experience that was taught a long time ago. by my senior management that if you bring me a problem, you better bring me some type of proposed solution. And if you go look at the blogs, everyone talks about the problems. And then myself as a candidate, when I will challenge another candidate on questions and ask, okay, how? That's what I'm hoping that my message resonates with you as voters, that you do ask that question. We still have another month until November 7th. So take the time. Would I like you to vote for me? Yes. But what I really want is greater involvement in doing due diligence. And then vote your heart. Vote what you believe. But just go ahead and ask how and really get to know each of us. After that, if you've done your due diligence, God bless you. Vote for what you feel is right. But typically, like I said, that's a reflection of the candidates on how they run their campaign. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Danko. Mayor Bacher, many voters will consider your past voting record, whether or not you voted in elections, as an indication of your level of civic involvement and belief in our system. Please describe your voting record.
Well, gosh, if that's the only thing that I'm going to be judged on, I'm going to be okay. I have a very strong voting record. I'm very competitive. For those of you who know me, you know that to be true. And first thing I did was I compared my voting record to those sitting at this table, those sitting behind the dais, and a number of other people who wanted to see if they could beat my voting record. And I'm proud to say that so far I think I have the strongest voting record. I think it's very important to vote. I think that, as one of our candidates has already said, if you don't vote, it's hard for you with good faith to complain because you're not doing anything to solve the problem. And so I try never to miss an election. I have, apparently there's a miss on my voting record. I distinctly remember that was the first time I ever tried to early vote. And given what I know about Fulton elections, I guess I'm not surprised somehow that got missed. But at the end of the day, I think that we all need to get involved and we all need to vote, and then we can do all the complaining we want.
Thank you, Mayor Bacher. Candidate Marchetti, the state of Georgia requires the Steinberg Act to be used in making decisions on zoning cases. Tell us what you know about the Steinberg Act and the 6 criteria to be used.
I think it was Mr. Bragg already answered that question, what it is. I think my position on that is that it's a guideline as any other situation like that. And I think the most important thing for us to do is to look how we can apply any zoning laws, any information that we might get from any other sources. We are a city, we're a city that's maturing, we're growing, we're developing. And I think that the most important part of that is for us to be able to take all of those elements and situations that we currently have, package those up, do a good evaluation of them, and see if those zoning laws or regulations apply to us in a fashion as to make our zoning decisions any better. We have the opportunity to create our own, to adopt things that make sense for us. And so I would encourage everyone to get involved, participate in these, and get involved in actually how do we make these decisions. You know, we can look at what's happening in our city. We talk about voting records, only 6,500 people voted in the last mayoral election. And we have lines of communications that need to be improved. We have a number of other issues that I think are perhaps maybe more relevant than evaluating the zoning law. So I would encourage everyone to say, how do these affect us? Are they good for us? Will they allow us to achieve what we need to achieve as a city? Do they fall into what we envision as a city? Is it going to allow us to continue on with the character that the residents, the character of a neighborhood? Is it going to allow us to do those things and execute and fulfill the vision of the community? That's what I would recommend. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Marchetti. Councilmember Andres. The mayor and city council are responsible for making decisions on zoning cases here in Johns Creek, and zoning ordinances are quite detailed and can be confusing. How did you, or how do you, plan to educate yourself on zoning ordinances and procedures so you can make informed decisions?
Okay, so before I ran for council, I went to council meetings for years, and I followed the topics and did research on my own. So the first meeting, when I was elected in December 2015, there was a proposed recommendation to the zoning ordinance, and it was 200 and some pages, and I had just been sworn in, and I requested that the council hold off, because I hadn't had time to look at it, and if I'm going to vote on something, I'm going to look at the entire document. So they postponed looking at that till the next meeting in January, and I went through that document from front to back and actually found a lot of items in that document that we ultimately took out from changing because they would have dramatically changed mixed-use definition. They were also changing the height restrictions, and I don't know if that was the intention or it was an accident, but anyway, we ended up taking some of those things out because they would have negatively impacted, from my perspective, our zoning ordinances. So for me, I educate myself by getting into the details, reading them, learning them, applying what I learned to the topic that is before us so that I can make an informed, educated decision. So that is what I did before, and I will continue to do that. As each independent case comes before us, we're given the information that's applicable to it, and so the onus is on us to do the research. So that's what I would do to educate myself to make sure I'm making the best decision that I can.
Thank you, Councilmember Andres. Candidate Jackson. During the selection cycle, posts on social media outlets such as Nextdoor, Facebook, and other local blogs seem to have hit a new low in terms of attacking individual candidates. These types of posts can result in a misinformed public. What solutions would you propose in order to provide the public with accurate information and credible sources?
I would first tell you that I've refused to read a lot of stuff. My wife bird dogs it and tells me what I should go see and what I should go read. And to be honest with you, I'm ashamed. I really am. Cyber harassment, cyberbullying is something that's really close to me. As adults, we can handle it. You know, I was talking to the officer in the corner, and I wasn't going to mention this, but my stepdaughter, my oldest stepdaughter, was at Johns Creek, and she was cyberbullied, cyber harassed. And he showed up at our house one day at 11 o'clock. And that's one of those things where you get nervous. And he and his partner informed me that my stepdaughter had made threats to kill herself over cyberbullying and cyber harassment. Well, guess what? She had tried. And I find it appalling that adults who don't know each other, who go by the name Anonymous, tippy toes, say no to vodka, whatever it is, actually hide behind your laptops and make comments about people you have no idea about. Make comments about me and why I got into this election, who got me in the election. You didn't know me, but you made the comments. I find it appalling. What's the solution? Don't read it. Stay away from it. It's ignorance.
Thank you, Adiva. Very well done. For the next round of questions, we have Ani. Yes.
Candidate Yang. During this election cycle, posts on... sorry. Candidate Yang, many voters will consider your past voting record, whether or not you have voted in elections, as an indication of your level of civic involvement and belief in our system. Please describe your voting record.
I actually vote in every election, so my voting record is that I vote because I believe that your vote is a voice and it reflects on what you would like to see in your local, state, federal level. So in terms of voting records, yes, I believe that voting is very important, and I encourage everyone to vote too.
Councilmember Zaprowski, the state of Georgia requires the Steinberg Act be used in making decisions on zoning cases. Tell us what you know about the Steinberg Act and 6 criteria to be used.
So the 6 criteria, and I don't know if I'll get these right, I think one is it suitable with the adjoining properties? 2, does it have any adverse effects on the adjoining properties or adjoining area properties? 3, is it viable as an economic use as it currently is? 4, does it have any adverse effects on traffic, sewer, schools, water, public safety? 5, did I say is it currently comply with our current comp plan? Does it comply, is it in compliance with it? Is that? And I think 6, is there any changing or existing conditions that run for it? And these are used to kind of give everyone a guide to help us in zoning cases, and every time we get a zoning case, we have to use these. This is an act, and in Johns Creek, we've shown that we don't want a whole lot in Johns Creek, and that it's a two-way street. One, the landowners have rights, and we have to follow the law. There's laws that we have to follow, so you have to balance that with what the community wants, and so it's never an easy decision. You know, one of the questions I'll probably have to answer later, the JCCA does a great zoning 101 to learn more about that, and I highly suggest anyone to go to that. But as a council member, sometimes you have to make a decision that you don't want to make. It's not the one that you would prefer to do, but there are consequences for that. And sometimes we've made decisions and said no, and we've been sued and lost. And so you use these criteria to make the best decisions you can with you guys in mind, but yet also following the rule of law. And so that's what you try to do with these and make the best decisions you can. And it's, I promise you, never an easy decision. Developers try to pack as much as they can on these places. So it's not always an easy decision, but that's my knowledge of the criteria. We could go into deeper, but that's okay. 10 minutes.
Candidate Bradbury. The mayor and city council are responsible for making decisions on zoning cases here in Johns Creek, and zoning ordinances are quite detailed and can be confusing. How did you, or how do you, plan to educate yourself on zoning ordinances and procedures so you can make informed decisions?
Thank you. So, when I decided that I wanted to start really honing in on what was going on in Johns Creek, I went to my first city council meeting about 2.5 years ago. I have not missed a regular city council meeting since then. And the reason I go is because I always learn more. And it's usually something that is something I can maybe share, and maybe it helps all of the community or the residents to get more involved. But, you know, it's just like the case that we had just at the last meeting, where it was about the zoning for the homes right there at Morton and Jones Bridge. You know, it was a long meeting, there's a lot there, but if you pay attention, you learn a lot. I've also done the JCCA 101. I read the agenda packet and all the information in those as best I can. But I want to just say that the comprehensive land use plan, and this is maybe a little off topic, but the comprehensive land use plan is going to be the overarching document that guides our zoning into the future over the next 20 years. We'll do another review in 10 years. But it's very important that all of you stay involved in that process, because we can deal with individual zoning cases, or we can get the comprehensive land use right and make sure that we have the ability as residents and as a council to have a greater impact and a greater ability to say no if there's a project that we do not feel is in our best interest.
Thank you. Candidate Borden. During this election cycle, posts on social media outlets such as Nextdoor, Facebook, and other local blogs seem to have hit a new low in terms of attacking individual candidates. These types of posts can result in a misinformed public. What solutions would you propose in order to provide the public with accurate information and credible sources?
Okay, so I think everyone's done a pretty good job of talking about how the concept of bullying, in this particular case cyberbullying, is something that we should be above that at this point. So I'm not going to dwell on that part of it, but I am going to answer your question. I find that the most credible way and the most credible source to find out any information is to go directly to the person that's supposed to have the information. And while some folks may not be comfortable doing that, I actually think that the more we do that, the more we will be able to rise above where we are today. We have a lot of issues in not just Johns Creek. Actually, we're probably doing pretty good compared to the rest of the country and the country as a whole. And really the best way to find a credible source is to go right to the source, right to the person. Unfortunately, we can't dictate to people what they're going to do, okay? So the whole advent of social media has created a mode for people to be able to, maybe they don't feel comfortable saying things directly to someone, so they go and they have keyboard courage, as we call it, and they type stuff on their keyboard and it comes across. At the end of the day, the only way you're going to know the truth is by going to the person. And so I encourage everybody to do that. From the students' perspectives, this is a bigger challenge for you, really, than it really should be for the adults. You're growing up in this, and unfortunately, this is all you know. And so I can't wait to have an opportunity to work with the schools to maybe put some programs into place to deal with this and stop this from happening.
Thank you. Candidate Vanko, many voters will consider your past voting record, whether or not you voted in elections, as an indication of your level of civic involvement and belief in our system. Please describe your voting record.
Like most of the candidates, but I'm very proud of my voting record. I am a registered Republican. I have those family conservative values. I believe in fiscal conservativity as well. I think we have to watch how our money's spent, so I align myself as a conservative, as a Republican. Not just voting in the general elections when presidential elections come out, but also for critical state elections and local elections. And that is on the voting record, and most of us probably have our voting record at our disposal if we're running, because we probably have all looked at that. Beyond the voting record, my experience, besides running for city council here in the city of Johns Creek, I also ran for county commissioner in District 3 in Forsyth County in 2010. This is a passion for me. It's not because I want to hear myself talk. My traditional New York Italian values has taught me over the years, and the way I was raised, is that your neighbors are not just 2 doors down from you. Your neighbors are your community. And there's 80,000 neighbors, and I'm not fluffing this up, but we are a community. And I'm going to say this, we're fortunate enough, we can talk about transportation, yes, we can talk about all the issues. And these are things that whoever you vote for in the next council is going to have to address. But here's the thing, we're blessed. I have friends of mine that their daughter is now fighting cancer. I just want to put everything in perspective because it ties in also to the contentious and divisiveness within the city. There's a lot bigger problems out there, and we got to stick together as a community if we're going to grow Johns Creek in a proper manner. Let's count our blessings. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Bodker, the state of Georgia requires the Steinberg Act be used in making decisions on zoning cases. Tell us what you know about the Steinberg Act and the 6 criteria to be used.
Well, I think Lenny summed up the criteria. What I know about it is I actually used the Steinberg Act to win cases in front of the Fulton County Commission back when I was co-zoning chair of the JCCA. I think that the public could do good to follow the JCCA and work with the JCCA and recognize that the cases that come before the city council, they're like court cases. The applicant is going to argue for their side, and the public and those who are in opposition argue against it. And as the council, we're supposed to take in the evidence and render a decision. So the more informed that our community is on the Steinbergs and how to argue a case, the better for all of us, because then they can make a better case against arguably a tilted situation in that the applicant does it forever and the public doesn't always do it. So at the end of the day, the Steinbergs are very important, and I will tell you they're not a guide, they're the law. And as much as we would love to do exactly what people ask us to do, we do have to follow the law, and as the council, we unfortunately have to be the adults in the room, sometimes holding our nose and making decisions we don't like, but we have to follow the law and balance the needs of the landowner with the surrounding community.
Thank you. Candidate Marquetti. The mayor and city council are responsible for making decisions on zoning cases here in Johns Creek, and zoning ordinances are quite detailed and can be confusing. How do you plan to educate yourself on zoning ordinances and procedures so you can make informed decisions?
I plan on doing the things that I've done most of my life. I'm well educated. I have a master's degree. I've achieved Series 766 financial licenses. I am ranked in the top 50 graduates of Keller Graduate School at DeVry University. And I achieved that by understanding what it is that I had to study, what it is that I had to learn, what it is that I had to do to be successful in business. I would apply the same approach to learning about zoning. Whatever those issues are, whatever those laws are that would be applicable to us making decisions for our city, I would immerse myself in them, I would learn them, and I would apply them. I don't think that would be any different than the things I've done in the past. But I do believe it's important not only for me to understand those, but in any way possible, I'd like to communicate that to other residents who might be able to add to or contribute to us in the decision-making process. So it isn't just my education. I think it's important that we as a community, as an administration that leads this community, I think we're responsible for getting as many people as we can to learn it, to understand it to a level that will allow us to make good decisions and allow us to continue to move our city forward with the vision that we originally had about 11 years ago. And that's exactly what I would do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Andres. During this election cycle, posts on social media outlets such as Nextdoor, Facebook, and other local blogs seem to have hit a next new low in terms of attacking individual candidates. These types of posts can result in a misinformed public. What solutions would you propose in order to provide the public with accurate information and credible sources?
So everybody has talked about different perspectives on this, and I will say that my husband Mark and I have been talking about civil discourse in this country for at least 10 years because it has been degrading significantly. What's very disappointing is seeing it happen with your neighbor and you don't know it's your neighbor. So from my perspective, when we talk about it, when Mark and I talk about it, we're trying to diagnose, take the emotion out and diagnose why is this happening. And so to fully understand it, you have to tear apart the piece that people are looking for information that they can't get now, whether it's they are not going to the right spot, they're not hearing it from the right person, whatever it is, and there's a lack of trust. And so from there, news sources are created. It's like voting today. Many people will go to their neighbors and say, who are you voting for? Okay, that's who I'll vote for. So in this situation, civil discourse in our nation, it's right here in Johns Creek, and it's easy to be able to share a negative opinion if you can anonymously post. What I would recommend as individuals is recognize and start getting to know our neighbors again. You know, if you get out there and you communicate with people, it's harder to put a label on somebody. If you're sitting across from them, yes, they may have a different political affiliation, yes, they may be something different, but when you needed something at your house, they were there to help you. Their neighbors came out. You know your neighbors. You're helping your neighbors again. When I was a kid, we knew everybody on our block. Today, we don't. And I think that's part of the problem in our country and in our city, is that we don't know everybody that lives around us. We don't know what they believe. So we have to start building trust with our politicians in particular. And then from there, getting credible news sources. And news is no longer news because someone's always in the end sharing a perspective. So there isn't one news source out there that lists the facts and doesn't lead you to a conclusion. So it's being aware of what you're being told and then doing your research on your own. But if we start talking to each other, that's going to help a lot.
Candidate Jackson, many voters will consider your past voting record, whether or not you voted in elections, as an indication of your level of civic involvement and belief in our system. Please describe your voting record.
I would love to sit before you and tell you I voted in every election, but I'd be lying. I vote in a lot of national, a lot of state. Local, I vote when I get angry, when I get involved in issues that are going on, and I'm not happy. If I'm happy, I typically let things go as they are. I would love to sit here and tell you that I have a spotless record. But again, I've been lying. And I dare to guess, quite a few people up here have missed it as well. But I'm human, okay? And again, I get involved when I feel the need to actually go out and use my vote as a voice of change. So, spent 70 times in midlife. Decent, fairly decent.
Thank you, Ani. Give Ani a hand for that. I believe we're 56 minutes into it. That's almost an hour. If you, as a group, would like for us to just keep right on going, we can. The plan was to take a little 5-minute break, let you stretch your legs and come back and start again. You want to take a quick break? Yes? Good. We'll take a 5-minute break and then we'll start back with the questions.
Well, Lenny was actually nice enough to talk about the criterias, and so I'm not going to go over all the criterias, like suitability, viability, adverse effects, but I am going to go over the fact that the Steinberg Act is a law, and therefore I'm going to segue into the fact that it's very important as residents and the city council, we get the comp plan done correctly. So if we can get that done correctly, we as residents have a better way of ensuring that what our wants and needs for our city are going to be better reflected, so that we can fight anything that doesn't meet our plans, but yet, you know, the developers are allowed to also develop, but we as residents also have to have the ability to say, hey, this adversely affects us, or this, or the plan really, you know, or getting our comp plan actually helps making, if we do our comp plan correctly, we will make sure that we can ensure that our Steinberg Act and our wants and needs are going to match up better.
Thank you, Ms. Councilmember Zaprowski. The mayor and city council are responsible for making decisions on zoning cases here in Johns Creek, and zoning ordinances are quite detailed and can be confusing. How did you, or how do you, plan to educate yourself on zoning ordinances and procedures so you can make informed decisions?
Well, you have to be involved to do that, and you know, I spent some time on the Zoning Board of Appeals before I was on council, which is kind of a quasi-judicial board. It's just experience, and I think that's where something I will talk about. I think over the last 4 years, I've been the most staunch defender of our comp plan of anyone on the council. I think my record proves that. I think that's why I was asked to be on the comp plan update committee. I thank those guys. We've been at this for a year. They've been working their tails off, and if you meet one of them, thank them. It's been a lot of work. It is probably the most important thing going in our city right now. And I can give you some highlights. It's still in draft form. We still have to have some conversations, but the way it's going, we've heard clearly that we want to remain a premier residential veteran community. And the way it's shaping out, we're going to do that. 91% of our city is residential. In the current draft, we have 8 community planning areas, and in that, we will not see more than 3 units per acre. We used to have a 4 units per acre, but we've taken that out. So 91% of our city will not be over 3 units per acre. And in 3 areas, the River Estates, the Autry Mill, Shakerag, will be 1 unit per acre. Medlock Bridge 2, OC, or Newtown, OC, and the Shark Fin could be up to 3. That's important. There will be some areas of possible growth, and we have to have discussions what we want to do that. But I believe that if this comp plan goes through like we want, we will average less than 2 units per acre for our city. That is not high density, my friends. And I think that's clearly what we've heard. And, you know, I think that's what we're experiencing. I'm the most senior member of this council right now, besides our mayor, and experience matters sometimes. And in zoning cases, it does. I'm done.
Thank you, Councilmember Zakrowski. Candidate Bradbury, during this election cycle, posts on social media outlets such as Nextdoor, Facebook, and other local blogs seem to have hit a new low in terms of attacking individual candidates. These types of posts can result in a misinformed public. What solutions would you propose in order to provide the public with accurate information and credible sources?
So first of all, I take responsibility for what I communicate. I think it's important for every individual to take responsibility for what they communicate. I would fear a future where in America we try to put the government in control of what is true and what is not true. Because our history, and I guess if you really look at the age of reason, it's all, our country is built on competition of ideas. That's the way our legal system is. You have a prosecutor and a defender. They both make their case, and out of that we have a jury that tries to discern the truth. That's how our politics is. We have candidates that are up here competing, and it's up to you to be discerning and to figure out what is the truth. Now, we're all adults, and I'm talking about politics. When it comes to our young people, I think that's a different story. I do worry about that. I've talked to child psychologists. I know that especially because of online media and the proliferation of devices, there's just a lot more depression and suicide. Chris, thanks for sharing what you shared earlier. And you know, I actually saw each other today at the gas station, and we're talking about that. And it worries me. And so, you know, parents, you know, try to limit your child's access to devices, especially while they're young, because cyberbullying is real. But when it comes to politics, I believe in competition, and out of that, hopefully the cream rises to the top. I don't like anonymous posts, but at the same time, I want to see more voices, not less.
Candidate Morton, many voters will consider your past voting record, whether or not you voted in elections, as an indication of your level of civic involvement and belief in our system. Please describe your voting record.
I'm happy to describe my voting record. If you look at my voting record, it's a few things will pop out to you. Independent thought is one thing that's going to pop out at you, because I vote and have voted my entire life, irregardless of party. I do my research on all candidates, on both sides, or 3 sides, or 4 now, however many parties we have now. And I make my determination based on the person, their experience, and whether or not I think that that is going to bring about opportunities for us to move forward. I'm kind of big on moving forward. Process improvement and moving forward are 2 big things. So there's a level of independent thought that you'll see, and it's kind of a little bit of a mosaic of colors, and that is why my signs are purple, because red and blue together make purple. So that's a little bit about my voting record.
Candidate Banco. The state of Georgia requires the Steinberg Act to be used in making decisions on zoning cases. Tell us what you know about the Steinberg Act and the 6 criteria to be used.
I think we've gone through the basic guidelines that the Steinberg Act talks about. When he gave a good description, we heard about that. Just like on the CAC comp plan, there's state regulations as far as that and the process that we have to go through. The one thing, though, that we have to take things to the next level at our local level, each one is a guideline by the state level, but it doesn't define the actual process that we have to set up within the city to gain the input from all the voters within the city of Johns Creek. That's still left up to us. Lenny mentioned about the CAC. I am a member of the CAC. The dialogue that goes on, Michael, Irene in the back, boy, it gets contentious, but everybody on that CAC is trying to define the process. This is the first time that we're going through this review. There was the initial one, but this is the second one. Then we got to do this again. The process is up to us, and that's what we're working on. I mentioned, everyone's heard me talk about residential nodes, commercial nodes, this idea that I came up with, that when the consultants were around, I proposed this idea late 2016 when I was on the CAC. There's plenty of public comment on that. I'm happy to say that as a collaborative effort, everybody, whether they're voting for me or not, listened to that idea, and last meeting, just 2 weeks ago, we adopted community planning areas that allows 8 community planning areas, which is just another name for the residential nodes, where the process now is, there's going to be a Shake Rack CPA, there's going to be a Newtown CPA, greater voice for the homeowners through these CPAs. Thank you.
Mayor Bacher. The mayor and city council are responsible for making decisions on zoning cases here in Johns Creek, and zoning ordinances are quite detailed and can be confusing. How did you, or how do you, plan to educate yourself on zoning ordinances and procedures so you can make informed decisions?
I've been investing myself in every topic of this city since before cityhood. I guess one of the ways I got educated on the zoning ordinances is I wrote them. So as one of the original council members, but education can never stop, and the processes do change, the laws do change. They've been fairly static in this particular area. But I think the most important thing that I can do is continue to do the things that I have done in the past. I've tried to get my education from those within the city. I've read material from those outside the city. I've sought information from those who come against us, the zoning attorneys. I've sought education from the Georgia Municipal Association, from the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and a number of other sources, the Atlanta Regional Commission, et cetera, all of which I've served on at various times. So I think the best thing that we can do is get very educated. That way we make the right kind of decisions. People may not like the decisions, but at least they will stand up in court, and that's the best way that we can protect our citizens.
Candidate Marchetti. During this election cycle,
Okay. Glad I asked. So my voting record going and actually voting outward for other positions, president, senators, all of that, has been fairly consistent post-children. I break my life down into pre and post kids because pre-kids, I think we all know, we're trying to figure life out. I voted pretty much at the federal level before I had children. And after children, you start getting connected in a community and you start learning. And so I've consistently voted in elections in what was unincorporated Fulton County and now Johns Creek consistently. Now on council, my votes have all been consistent. I have strong principles that are based on conservatism, which is low taxes, limited government, and a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. And I've consistently voted along those lines where I've not supported tax increases, supported commitments that I made to you. I followed through on every one of those. So what I would say for me, I don't vote if I don't understand and fully understand the topic. So I research all the topics that come before council. And then I make a very informed decision by having very public conversations for transparency for you, so that you know exactly what's being discussed and why votes are the way they are. So for me, what I would say is my votes are consistent and pretty much will know where I'm going to land before I get there on those topics. And I believe that civic engagement is critical and to be informed to do that. So that's what I would say about my voting record.
Candidate Jackson, the state of Georgia requires the Steinberg Act be used in making decisions on zoning cases. Tell us what you know about the Steinberg Act and the 6 criteria to be used.
Well, first off, you have a future in politics, whether with your last answer. I'll make this easy because I think I'm the last one to answer this question, and everybody has pretty much discussed it. We know, I think the Steinberg Act from 1985, what zoning we do has to fit within our community vision, has to fit within our comp plan. And I think the mayor alluded to it, and I don't know if he stated it loud enough, but the fact of the matter is that the city council ends up being the judge, and you need leaders on the city council to handle what's going to happen over the next 4 years if these zoning cases are going to come before us. Lenny did a great job of explaining all 6. Congrats on that. And I think he also talked about going to a 101 class, which I may do as well. So I appreciate that. But I wish I could add more, but it's pretty clear and cut. And that's kind of the sad thing about being the last person to answer that question, which everybody has already answered.
So I was just discussing with my co-moderator that while not all candidates have answered all of the questions, we think the questions have been asked enough. Yes. Are you okay with that? Thank you for what a wonderful job they did writing the questions. Bonnie is going to start out with an audience question, and we're going to ask it just of mayoral candidates at this point.
Can I just say one thing? I was so prepared for the voter question, and I was just going to say that I was so keen to research this guy's voting record back in the 80s.
I'm sorry, you're disqualified.
Okay, first for Mayor Blocker, what measure of success is appropriate for our city? Why? And how would it reflect a quality of life measurement for residents?
I think the most important measure of success is that the majority of the decisions that the city council makes are in concert with the majority feeling of our citizens. Now, that's not a perfect science. You can never really know exactly how everyone feels, but the best thing you can do is get out in the community, do everything that you can to gather input, and try to reflect that in your decisions. In terms of what would I see as a measure of success for our community, I think that if our community 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now reflects the exceptionalism that it starts with today, then I think we'll be successful. Along that time, a lot's going to change. A lot's changing around us. I mean, we look at the traffic and many of the issues that we face, and some of them are of our own making, but the majority of them are the fact that everything's grown around us and we seem to be a pass-through community. But to me, success long-term will be that we're able to stand up, address those issues as best we can, try to keep up with everything that happens around us, but above all, reflect the will of our community.
Thank you. Candidate Marchetti, same question. What measure of success is appropriate for our city? Why? And how would it reflect a quality of life measurement for residents?
I think my measure of success would be the sense that our community is united, a sense that our community is involved. We have a very diverse group of cultures in our city at this time. It's grown and become more diverse over the last 10, 11 years since we've been in the city. My measure of success would be to see how we can take these different cultures and how we can establish them into a community whereby we can share the benefits of each of these cultures. I'm from Chicago, and in Chicago we had every community, whether we went to Chinatown or Greektown or little Italian village or whatever it was, we had the ability to share some of those wonderful benefits of each culture. So one of the things I would consider to be a success is if I saw all these communities melded together, or all these cultures melded together to form a community. The other thing I would say is I would measure it by involvement of the residents. We don't vote in elections for mayor or for any city council. Attendance is very low. We don't see a lot of people participate in communicating what their ideas are. I think we need to establish channels that allow people to communicate effectively, that they're put through a process where they can come to the city council and to the mayor so that they can be addressed. We need to open it up. We need to open it up and have our community become much more involved in activities and how we form and shape the city into the future. That's what I think is a measure of success.
We'll have one question for each of the candidates in post 3.
Candidate Bradbury, will you work to improve transportation in Johns Creek to address the serious traffic problem? What exactly will you do?
So transportation, that is definitely the #1 concern. It reaches all of us. Sometimes you're out walking door to door and someone will say, well, are you Republican or Democrat? I'm like, well, if you're out in the traffic, it doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. I have fairly, I think, well-known spoken out against the widening of 141 and Jones Bridge. I feel like those two projects in particular are not in our future best interest. As part of that, I felt the responsibility to suggest how we could do things differently, how we could preserve our residential quality, but still improve traffic flow along those corridors. I've actually spent time getting out of the car, walking, looking at intersections along 141, looking at how if we were to add more turn lanes, make the intersections fatter, for instance, to get more cars to the intersection. If we take a right turn only lane and turn it into a dual purpose lane where you not only just have to go right, but you can maybe go straight as well to improve the amount of throughput during one red light cycle. To me, that has got to be something that we are laser focused on. We need to not only be focused with our time, but also in our budget. There are some things that perhaps are ancillary to the mission of the city. I think that it's important that we husband our resources to put more into solving our traffic solution problem, traffic solution needs. Only 17% of our lights in Johns Creek are part of the intelligent traffic system. I would like to see greater participation, more of those lights and intersections, and get the best technology possible on that.
Candidate Horton, will you work to improve transportation in Johns Creek to address the serious traffic problem? What exactly will you do?
Sure. So let's start by talking about the concept of traffic issues, because that is not only is it a regional issue, it's Johns Creek for sure, but it's a regional issue. It also is a national issue. Most major cities in our country have similar issues to us. And so there are a lot of organizations, the ARC, the Atlanta Regional Commission, one of their main responsibilities is to look at the region as a whole and determine the plans of attack for how to move forward. And those are traffic experts. I venture to say, as experienced as I am on that, none of us, including myself, are as expert at dealing with traffic issues as the folks there and the civil engineers that they work with and all of those people. So for me, this is really a regional issue. And so one of the first things that I would do, in fact, I've started to do that already. I've met with a few folks from the ARC that I know personally, that I've worked with on other projects. I've begun to open up the dialogue with them about what their what their goals and objectives are. If you look and Google it, you can find Plan 2040. It's their plan for what traffic and what's going to fix traffic in the metro area in the next 20-some years. So I think we can try to be independent with that, but quite frankly, we've got to work together. So it's working with the county, it's working with the other communities around us. I was at a meeting the other day, and there were people from Sandy Springs Council and Roswell, and so on and so forth. So it's important for us to get together and work together on that. And that's where I would start. And I agree with what John said. Widening is not the only answer, and probably isn't the answer. We've got to come up with some other things long term.
Candidate Banco, will you work to improve transportation in Johns Creek to address the serious traffic problem? What exactly will you do?
Specifically, what would I do? It would be a three-tiered approach, and I put this out there before. The biggest problem is obviously peak hours, and Cherokee County is going to continue growing, and so is Forsyth County. So the main talk is about 141 widening, and if you look at Fulton County, it is those arteries that we're concerned with, 141 and even Jones Bridge. Those are north-south arteries. My proposal is that we have to collectively get together and push at the regional level, but it's important for council to push an east-west solution prior to those vehicles on peak hours passing through our city. That's specific. We need an east-west solution through Cherokee before we cross McGinnis Ferry, all the way around so people can get over to Peachtree Industrial outside our city. We've got to address the problem at the input side. And if you think about it, north-south is the problem. So how do you do that? You change the input flow. But we've got to get together. And I believe council, this next council, has to push for that. In Forsyth County, like I said, when I ran, it was called the Northern Arc. And Forsyth County residents pushed back on it. Why? Because it was going to go through their neighborhoods. They didn't want it, but that's where the problem exists. Second tier, our secondary arteries. Those are the arteries that get us from our subdivisions to maybe if you're going to go to the new mall up at McFarland. Those we start tweaking to make sure that for Johns Creek residents we get through. The third tier is trail paths that I recommended on the CAC to have golf carts connecting over to trail paths to public commercial nodes from subdivisions, so local residents can get by. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates.
Thank you. Next, Ani will ask questions of Post 1 and Post 5, and we'll start with Post 5.
Councilmember Andres, how do you feel about term limits, and if you're in favor, what action would you take to institute term limits in Johns Creek? If you aren't in favor, why not?
So term limits are a complicated conversation because functionally this country was set up to not have term limits because individuals were truly supposed to represent their areas, do it for a limited time, and go home. Politics has now become a full-time job for people, and they end up sitting in the job for time much longer than the term was meant for. And then you run into difficulty because a lot of individuals become intimidated to run against incumbents because they say I could never win because that person has the upper hand. I think that I support term limits because many folks have difficulty term limiting themselves. And at the end of the day, we need to inspire residents to be able to stand up and run because it's your involvement, it's your government. And if we sit back and allow people to be in positions for 40 years, and it becomes an entitled position like we see at the federal level, then that's on us. So I would look to modify the charter, which would require language change. It would have to then go to The legislature, well, you would need agreement from the council to do that in the majority, and then it would have to go to the state house. I think that for Johns Creek, in its infancy, a lot more people are starting to be engaged. And if we make this change now, we may be able to set that up so that individuals will rotate over a specific defined term period. I think 2 terms is sufficient. That's a long time, that's 8 years. And I can tell you from my perspective, the amount of research and the amount of involvement I have in the community, it's easily 20, 25 hours a week. That's a lot of time and effort that you're putting into your community. And I think that if everybody could do that for 4 years, imagine how engaged we would be, how cordial the conversation would be between our neighbors. So.
Candidate Jackson, how do you feel about term limits? And if you're in favor, what action would you take to institute term limits in Johns Creek? If you aren't in favor, why not?
I've actually gone back and forth with this in my mind, and part of that reason is we're still a young city, and this is absolutely nothing against Alex. I've had more time to spend and talk to him and got to learn about his platform and have enjoyed my conversations. But as a young city who is at a critical point, you wonder, is it good to swap out people, regardless of how long they've been at this point in time, for a part-time job if they can get us to the next level? Then I thought about it more and realized, you know what, you're right. People do have an opportunity and they should have a chance to come in here and help lead this city. We have a lot of people here who would be great at doing this job, whether it's council or mayor. They just don't know it yet. And I fully agree. Yeah, I think we should change the charter. I think two terms is, I've come to that conclusion, is probably suffice. Again, it is a part-time job, but nobody's going to get rich with what they pay you for this job. I'll tell you that right now. But I think that the experience in itself is worth running. I know I'm rambling, but I agree a lot with actually what she said, but I am now for term limits, yes.
So I'll ask the same questions to post 1. Candidate Yang, how do you feel about term limits? And if you're in favor, what action would you take to institute term limits in Johns Creek? If you aren't in favor, why not?
I am in favor of term limits. Even though this is a part-time job, it also is a lot of work. But term limits, the reason why we have term limits or we want term limits is so that it's not a lifetime job, and also, to Stephanie's point, sometimes people are in the job for too long and it becomes them, their identity, and it almost is their city, but it should be the resident's city. It should be the city for the residents and not for the person who's running it. And yes, we are young. Yes, we do need some continuity, but we already have continuity. 8 years is a long time. No, 6.5 is a long time. I can't do anything unless I'm on council. So if I'm on council, then yes, I would propose, or whoever makes the motion, I would agree to having a term limit, and then we would have to take it, get it in the charter, go to the state, but that's how I would do it.
Councilmember Zaprowski, how do you feel about term limits? And if you're in favor, what action would you take to institute term limits in Johns Creek? If you aren't in favor, why not?
I am 100% in favor of term limits. I have already said I will term limit myself. I've done this for 4 years, and I can do it. I'm excited for 4 more, but I don't think I have it after that. It's a lot of work. It takes its toll on you to do your job right, and it's not about us as councilors. It's about representing the people. It's very humbling to be elected in this position. It really is, and I take that job very, very serious. I think about it before every meeting I go into, and I do it because we're not doing this to be politicians. I don't think anyone is. We're doing it to be public servants. We're trying to serve you. We care about our community. Everyone running here is doing the same job. But it does take a toll. You've got to have a good family life. Your business will probably take a little hit when you do this job. I would think any council member will tell you that, but you do it because you care and you want to. There's a lot to it. You got to have thick skin, I'll tell you that, and you got to be willing to listen. Those are the requirements. I don't think there'll be any problem after this election getting this through. I don't think there's anyone that I've heard on the candidates or council members that would care. Right now, besides the mayor, we have a hard time people filling 4 years. So I don't know, 8 years seems like a lot, but I don't know the number. That's up to you guys. I mean, that's as a community what we decide. I'm all in favor of it. I'll vote for it. So let's do it.
Thank you. That concludes the question rounds, and so now it's time for closing statements. Would you pass it all the way back down to this end, please? As a reminder, each candidate will have 1 minute for closing.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Andres. Many of you know me, many of you may not. My family and I moved here back in 1999 when we bought our house. My son was 6 months old, and we've lived here since then in the same house. I love Johns Creek. I'm passionate about Johns Creek. That's why I ran for office. One of the major reasons was to have a government that actually listened to and engaged with the residents. I'm an accountant by trade. That's how I view life, and so that's how I tackle most issues, is from a numerical perspective, and you'll always get the best out of me for that. But it's my passion to engage residents and to make sure that we are a full, wholehearted community. I lead by example, and I lead by using the skills that I have from the private sector, which is why I want to implement some strong management and financial tools that a council can use going forward without having financial and even management experience, because anybody should be able to do this job if the structure's set up right, because it's about your heart, where you're coming from, and what it is you want to accomplish. So I ask for your vote on November 7th. Early voting starts October 16th. Thank you.
Stephanie had a great idea. Again, it's Alex Marchetti, and what I want to say is that I really didn't, at the beginning of this year, intend to run for mayor. The reason I did is because I have a deep sense of this city. I've been living here almost 25 years. And what really prompted me to do it was the fact that I have a sense that there is a division and the city is becoming divided. And it's becoming divided over which direction are we going to go. Are we going to be a buckhead? Are we going to be a resident-driven character kind of city or not? And I see such a division. It's disturbing to me. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to take the role. I wanted to take this path of finding what the residents wanted and driving forward based upon the residents first, what the residents would like to see, open communication so we can accomplish that. That's why I ran. Vote for me if you choose to. Thank you. I hope you do.
I want to say thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to serve you for the last 11 years. It's been a humbling experience. Sometimes it's been fun, sometimes it has not. You know, an election's a funny thing. You learn a lot about yourself you never knew. Think about that one for a while. That ties to the social media question. I'd like to serve one last term. I'd like to finish a job that I started, focus on the priorities that I stated earlier tonight, and do it representing your best interest. I've been fighting for the city since before we were a city. I helped create the city on your behalf, and I've helped steer it carefully for the last 11 years. 4 more years, that's what I'm asking. I hope I can earn your vote.
Thank you all for coming out. I'm the candidate that is trying to get everybody from that first level about talking about the problems and concerns at that first tier general level. For me, it's a longer sales cycle to earn your vote. I'm trying to get voters to go to that second level and ask, how are we going to solve the problems? That's my passion. I'm hoping that I'm generating ideas that create dialogue. My ideas are not absolute. This isn't about ideas according to Venko. These are ideas to instill dialogue. I'm looking for the feedback. I want to be able to represent you as a public servant and come up with the best solution for all of us. The ideas are not absolute. I'm looking for your input. I'm hoping that you see the same vision that I am, and I would humbly ask you to vote for Mark Benko for post 3. Thank you.
Again, just very quickly, thank you all for coming. Thanks to students. Again, you guys knocked it out of the park. Another great participation from you. For me, it's very simple. I've been going to the city council meetings, I've been watching the workshops, and I sat there and I thought, you know what? I have a very unique set of skills that I've been doing for 25 years for all these other communities. I need to be bringing that to our community. My daughter is 7 years old, we're gonna live in Johns Creek for a long time. And I want her to be able to grow up, go to high school, just like you guys are, be in the leadership group if she wants to, and be able to have a quality city that she lives in. And so for me, because of my background and experience, I can't sit on the sidelines and not try to help. I'm here to help, I know I can, and please check out my commitment to you, how I'm gonna conduct myself and my background. If you like it, I'm honored with your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. It's always great to see so many people come out to one of our debates because I think it gives hope to me that we still have a very, very committed citizenry. So the reason for my run is to preserve Johns Creek and to protect quality of life. I remember when we had the open house for the comprehensive land use plan. We had a consultant. That consultant came in and told the residents of Johns Creek that we needed to change to become more like Asheville, North Carolina, so that we could attract millennials, retain millennials, embrace workforce housing, embrace high-density housing. That, to me, is not what Johns Creek identity is. It's that premier veteran community, lower density. That's the golden goose that lays the golden eggs. That's what I want to protect, and that's the future that I see for Johns Creek. I would appreciate your vote. Thank you very much.
Look, I have a track record. You may or may not agree with it. I don't make a perfect vote every time. I can tell you, it troubles me when I don't get it right sometimes, and it's hard to sleep. If you want someone who's going to continue to try to listen to you, I'm looking at this crowd. Thank you for coming out tonight and staying this late. With the exception of a couple, I think I've probably talked to almost everyone in this room at some point. I've tried to listen. If that's what you want in a councilman, someone who's trying to do what's right by you, who is clearly passionate about this city, who's going to continue to work as hard as he can to get things right. Sometimes, you know, I'll be wrong sometimes, I'll admit it. But if that's what you're looking for, I'm your candidate. I stand by my record, and I'm here. I want to do this for 4 more years. I have the passion to do it. If you'll have me, I'll take this journey with you. I'm done after that, I promise.
Hi, I'm Isher Gang again, and I just wanted to say that I love the city. I'm invested in the city. I'm invested in the people in the city. I know that I don't know everyone, but I am going out there knocking on doors, trying to meet everyone. I'm trying to meet and get everyone's input, and that's what I want to do. I am a client relationship person, and that's what I do one-on-one, is learning, seeking, and providing solutions. And I want to provide solutions. Traffic, I want to provide traffic solutions. I want to make sure that our comp plan is done properly. I want to make sure that the residents' wants and needs are in what we decide, not what other people have made decisions by, from consultants or others. So, you know, for me, I want your vote, and I know that I can serve you, and I hope that you will consider my vote, consider voting for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give them another I'd like to say thank you to our 2 timekeepers, Venetia.
Please stand, please. They do a great job. I'd also like to compliment the Johnson Creek Community Association and Student Leadership Johnson Creek for going through the effort of putting this on. And in closing, I'd like to point out that it is 8 minutes before we were supposed to be finished. I just need a little extra. I like to get things done on time. And Student Leadership Johnson Creek has asked for all of the candidates to stay up front because they'd like to be able to take a picture with the leadership representatives and all the candidates. Thank you.